And action. Cole had a question on sleep. Actually, Cole's mom had a question on sleep. Cole didn't really have any questions at all. But this is common from a lot of my young folks, whether in elementary school, high school, college, master's program, even from my older ones. It's always a question about, well, what's good with sleep? I mean, we can all get by with very little sleep, and sleep sometimes is considered an interruption of my game. Or, I don't want to sleep, I want to watch TV. And it's so easy to push sleep away and put it as a low priority because the industry of food, the industry of movies, the industry of gaming, all will get you stimulated and tell you, you don't have to sleep. Even Red Bull, or coffee industry. You take this stuff, you don't have to sleep ever. And that's obviously wrong. So, as a life coach, I always will suggest specific plans to balance out life for my elderly adults, for my middle-aged adults, for my new moms and dads, for my kids. And certainly you have to trust where I'm coming from. I've been doing this long enough, about 20 years now, that I've been through a lot with my patients and with my own experiences, but we try to learn all this stuff in school, medical school, college, in residency, that's training after med school, and then we try to apply it to the human spirit, the human life, the family, the individual families out there, and then we try to take that knowledge, shape it, and give it to a person or a family to make them feel better and live long. Sometimes we'll even continue to learn through the interactions that we have as doctors with other patients, with big diseases that come around, or new information that comes about. But the bottom line is, when it comes to healthy lifestyle, there always has to be a certain amount of sleep time. Sleep time is divided into stages of sleep, it's called. So when you hit the pillow and you start to nod off, or when you're kind of watching a boring movie at night and you start to kind of nod off that way, the brain is telling you it's time to shut down. When some people don't have that symptom, some people just get really irritable, or they can't read the book because they have to keep on reading the same paragraph, or they become very emotional. Those are all signs that the brain is saying time to recharge. The brain definitely needs some downtime. The way the brain works, it's really fantastic. Even if you're getting straight A's and you can play the violin and you can perform on the court or on the field, it's still, the brain needs a break. The average human usually needs about 8 hours of sleep a night. And there are people above 8 hours and below 8 hours. But the average person, you should still shoot for that first. And then depending on your lifestyle situation and your medical problems, you can kind of tailor-make that stuff and go above or below 8 hours. But for somebody that's learning the ropes about how life is, how good of a person they are, how good of a instrument player they are, or a professional basketball player they are, or if they're going to be going and becoming the new Einstein, you have to at least do the basic building blocks, and that's going to be 8 hours a day. Now, if 8 hours a day seems like it doesn't fit right for you because like, I'm too irritated, I can't go to sleep 8 hours, or you get headaches, well, the body needs to adjust to that. You can't just say, I'm going to do 8 hours from this point on. You have to kind of adopt that. And sometimes with the stuff that's out there, like Red Bull, like caffeine, like high carbohydrate meals, or high protein meals, or eating late at night, or watching TV and the stimulation of certain screens, or the stimulation of certain lights. I'm not going to show you this light here, but this light is bouncing off me. I'm using this light so I look better and at least you can see me, but this is very stimulating, just like daytime. If you were to try to go take a nap outside in Chicago on the street now, you wouldn't be able to take a nap because it's way too shiny, there's too much noise. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of things that are going to tempt you to stay awake. But that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Again, even if you are a great violinist, even if you're a great basketball player, even if you're a great straight-A student, it's not the best thing to do. If you're not any of that stuff, or a combination of all of them together, then you definitely have to try to shoot for 8 hours a night. Why? Because again, the brain, studies have shown, medicine has shown that the brain, when it's not given what it needs to recharge itself, it fails. It doesn't fail overnight, but it'll fail in the long run. And you're not even going to notice it. Everybody else around you will notice it. And the obvious is your grades go downhill, you can't perform anymore, or you can't, you get injured, or you get your relationships at home, at school, just get deteriorated. So that's the obvious, but sometimes it's not so obvious. Sometimes there'll be a parent, your parent, saying, well, what are you doing? Fix your room, get to sleep, finish your food, you're eating too much, you're eating too little, you're spending too much time on the, you know, all that stuff is important to listen to because, again, age gives wisdom. Wisdom gives ideas about how to avoid conflict later on. That's my job as a life coach, as I was talking about, is to predict where people will end up. And if we're kind of skimpy on the sleep, usually people end up with a big challenge later on. You're not going to feel it immediately, you're going to have it later on. Later on in the form of not being able to get to the college you want, or later on in the form of having to do remedial courses over the summer, or later on in the fact that you lose relationships, you break relationships, you have to be shipped off to a different school, you keep on butting heads with your parents, your brothers and sisters. All that stuff potentially can be life-changing. And it's not changing for a good, it's changing for a bad. So, as I was getting to, I'm probably losing your attention now, but and that's another thing. If you have poor sleep, poor attention, and it makes it hard for you to interact with other people and read like we're supposed to read. So, the idea is when the brain gets shut-eye, and then between when it gets shut-eye and when it wakes up, it goes through these cycles, kind of like cycles where your computer is resetting itself. When your computer freezes, you press restart, and sometimes the bad program gets turned off and gets turned on again, and your computer is really fast. Well, same thing happens with your brain. It relies on hormones and electric impulse. The hormones, they're not infinite, but these little tiny cells in the brain make hormones, and the hormones get secreted, and they stimulate another cell to stimulate another cell to stimulate another cell to stimulate another cell. That's how you have a thought. That's how you move arm and muscle. That's how you eat and digest. So when you're firing off the cells rapidly and you don't have no break to recharge those cells, eventually they falter and you don't fire off appropriately unless you're overly stimulated with caffeine and drugs and alcohol, and that's not healthy, as you know. So what is the best way to keep that cycle going? Sleep. If you recharge 8 hours a night, and usually the brain is ready to go again, another day of tasking, of problem solving, of learning. If you don't, just like I used to think with watching World War II videos or movies back when I was a kid, when you have a guy in a foxhole and he's awake 24 hours a day, he'll actually, by mistake, shoot the other guy in the foxhole that's his friend. Friendly fire. Because he gets a little jumpy, he gets wrong decisions, he's acting by instinct. That's not the way we're supposed to do things. So, same thing happens in life. If we get really punchy, if we have bad decision making, if we go by natural reaction or reptilian brain, you're not going to fare properly. You're going to end up with no degree. You're going to end up wasting your summers because you have to go back to remedial school. You're going to end up hanging out with a bad crowd, having the most difficult most difficult scenarios when you try to leave the house. It's going to be a lot of suffering. So, how do we avoid the suffering later on? We pay right now. When do we pay? Grade school, high school, college. You have to follow the rules of higher education. So you got to do what the basic rules are as far as study, going to school, studying after school, and all that stuff. But again, you have to also follow the basic rules of humanity, and that usually means rejuvenation overnight, which again equals about 8 hours. Some people need more than 8 hours. If I'm a young person, or if I am a life coach for a young person, I don't go less than 8 hours. If you're going 6 hours, even if you're a straight A student, a well-gifted athlete or artist, I would still say you shoot for 8 at the minimum. So that's it, Cole. Hopefully this kind of gets you into why me and your parents are shooting for a certain baseline, but it's important. Otherwise, what's going to happen? You're going to be seeing me when you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, and I'm going to be giving you a lot of medicines or sending you to every test and specialist in the world, and then they're going to give you medicines and stick you with needles and do a whole bunch of things, and that's not cool. My goal for everybody is to not even have to see me, to be bulletproof, to live till 100, and continue with sports and love and all that other stuff. So, good question.